This strategy will protect you from contempt. So the way that you avoid making things personal is you have to figure out a way of communicating with another in a way that will not be threatening. There's an amazing book on this. It's called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, and it helps you be honest with other people without criticizing, without insulting, and without putting down other people. And the magic comes in the structure that feels somewhat fake for people who are not into being touchy-feely. Basically, when you're giving some kind of criticism, you want to basically have it in this format. So when some observation, I feel an emotion because I'm needing some universal need, would you be able to request? So we're just going to break down each one of these different parts. And every single one of these are tricky. And it's a thing that a lot of people will try to do and you'll spend your whole life trying to get really good at. And it gets really difficult. So the first one is you need to make an observation versus having an evaluation. So basically what you want to do is start your disagreement or criticism by anchoring it to something that is concrete. You do not want it to be something that is connected to opinion. It should be something that you actually saw or heard, because therefore you can't disagree with something that actually happened versus something I heard via rumor, or something that has to do something that seems emotional, or something that seems like an opinion. So I'll give you an example. An observation would be like, you said that you'd send that document last week and I haven't received it. All right. So that is a great observation. An evaluation that someone might say instead in the heat of the moment is that you're fucking lazy. Right? That kind of feels like an observation, but it's not. It's evaluating the person. I'll give you another example. Your work is sloppy. That is not objective. Instead, hey, 3 of the numbers in this report were inaccurate. That's where you want to start. You're always late. You want to be really careful because that's a generalization. It's an evaluation. Observation. Hey, you arrived 10 minutes late to the meeting this morning. Evaluation. You ignored me. Observation. I sent you 2 emails and I haven't received a response. Notice when we start with observation, we start with a fact that can't be refuted. And so we're not going to end up arguing about something else. Notice all those other evaluations, they immediately will trigger an emotion in you. And so that's why you want to be really careful that when you start this criticism, that you don't start with one of those. The next is we have to talk about our emotions, right? So I saw this irrefutable observation and it made me feel something. And what we have to be really careful of is not saying thoughts, but instead talking about feelings, which is kind of odd, but it's connected to the next point in the structure. So an emotion will be, I feel frustrated, right? Now, a thought would be, and it could be put in the same structure, is like, I feel that you aren't taking this seriously. And the way you can tell if something is a thought or a feeling is you substitute the phrase, I think, with I feel, and it still works. So, I think frustrated. Doesn't work. So that's a feeling. I think that you aren't taking this seriously. Oh, that's a thought. There's a couple of emotions that we have to be particularly careful of. One is anger, because anger is usually tied to a bunch of hosts of other things. So when someone says that I feel angry, you realizing that you feel angry, you want to be really, really specific about what's causing the anger, what's triggering it. The other tricky emotions are evaluative emotions. And usually what you need to figure out is what underlines that evaluation. So I'll give you an example. So I feel blamed, right? Someone else is evaluating me. I feel blamed. The impact actually is I feel scared. Someone is blaming me, and so I feel scared. So it takes a lot of work to understand that when someone is giving me if I'm feeling like some kind of judging feeling, what is at the core root of it? Other examples are, I feel judged. The actual impact is I feel resentful. I feel misunderstood. The impactful statement is actually I feel frustrated. I feel rejected. The real impact is I feel hurt. It's super hard. It's super, super hard. I'm going to have a link inside of this presentation to a PDF. It's 3 pages of evaluative emotions, impacted feelings you probably actually are feeling, and then connects this to a universal need that you need to overcome it, which leads us to our next thing. Every negative emotion lies an unmet universal need. And so what that means is that, like, when you're feeling one of these frustrated or blamed or scared or hurt feelings, there's something that's missing that you're going to need. And the thing that's really tricky about universal needs is you have to be careful of realizing, is it a strategy or is it a need? And is it truly universal? So I'll give you an example, right? You might be able to say, I need a sandwich. That is not a universal need. So you have to be really careful, right? And then you might say, like, I need a sandwich to give me nourishment. That's more like a strategy. A much better way might be, let me see here. You might say something like, I need you to copy me on every single email. But the thing is, that's not a universal need. That becomes very, very specific. A universal need would be, I need some transparency about this process. You have to be careful of not making needs about something that's very specific to yourself or just that situation. Because once it's a universal need, then it's something that everyone can agree that everyone should sort of have. So other universal needs are like, I need support. And the way you turn it not into a universal need is by saying something like, I need support from you. Because not everyone needs support from Henry, right? But everyone does need support. And as says you include from you, it stops being universal. So you want to be really careful of this. Okay. Requests versus demand. So at the very end, so basically we've said, like, hey, I've noticed something that can't be refuted. I've told you about a feeling and how it impacts me. And I told you that basically it results in some universal need that we all can agree that we need to have. And now we get to saying what we'd like to have changed as a result. And what you want to make is a request, not a demand. The difference is that a request is an invitation to the other person to meet our universal needs. It's much easier to be able to do than to say, like, I order you to do something. So what we want to do is make it very specific, our requests. So I request for you to be more respectful is not that great, because who defines what's respectful? My version of respectful might be different from someone else's. Your request should be something like, I request that you arrive to meetings on time. Say what you want. Don't say what you don't want. So what a lot of people will say is like, I request that you don't dismiss other people's ideas straight away. The thing is, it doesn't indicate the behavior that you do want. And so it becomes really difficult to act on. A better one would be, I request that when a team member shares an idea, you ask 2 or 3 probing questions before sharing a conclusion. And then stay curious. And so sometimes you might make a request and someone might say no. And what you need to do is not just freak out that the whole process isn't working. The idea is actually to be like, maybe I haven't put this request in a way that can meet more needs than just myself. Could I do this in a way so that they can understand and be on board for everyone to be sort of involved? If you want to learn more, there's a really great article on delivering constructive feedback in difficult situations by Dave Bailey. This is on Medium. I'll have a link to it. And he goes into far more detail, and it's a very, very good starting point for giving out this really hard feedback. We all know what technical debt is, right? So when we're building out software really, really quickly, and sometimes you're like, well, that's not going to scale really well, and it's going to be dirty and quick, but I'm going to get it out the door, and I'm just going to put that in the back of my mind as something I have to fix later. Well, in our relationships with one another, you will incur emotional debt. And unlike technical debt, you really don't want that to go for very long. You want to pay this down every day. So it turns out, also in John Gottman's research, that it wasn't that people who were really good at being in a marriage only thought about really big things. Turns out they would immediately bring up stuff even when it's really tiny or small. They would never let a small thing grow to be a medium thing and then eventually a big thing. They immediately will talk about it. It's like, oh man, can you close your mouth while you're chewing real quick? It's just like kind of bothering me right now. And then do it in a way that's sort of respectful. And so like when you're with your co-founders and you're in this really sensitive relationship and you're finding stuff that's being really troubling, like you can communicate those needs really quickly and you will prevent those small things from becoming big things.